Well, hello everybody and happy Thursday. Hope everyone is having a wonderful day so far. It's been a quick week, it seems like. So thank you for being with me today for this very important topic that we're going to be going over, preventing classroom burnout. This has been a tough year for so many people. This is a good topic to kind of go over. Whether you're an administrator or a classroom teacher, this is going to be applicable to you and hopefully very helpful to you. So, for those of you that this is your first time joining us, let me just kind of go over really quickly how this works. Many of you have done this several times now, so you've got it, but you are able to participate in the Facebook Live training, and we are live, so you can type questions or make comments in the chat screen, so that makes it instructor-led as far as licensing is concerned. So if you're trying to get your 20% of your instructor-led hours, this works for you. Now if you're watching the recorded video, then that will be self-instructional hours. At the end of the workshop today, I will post a link on Facebook for you to complete an online worksheet. If you are needing a certificate of completion for today, you click on that link, you complete the worksheet, and then I will email you a certificate of completion. There is a $5 fee for the certificate of completion, and again, that link will be posted at the end of the workshop today. Just to watch the workshop doesn't cost anything, so welcome, and I'm glad you're here. So there's no need to type in your name in the chat screen or tell me that you are here. I see that everyone is popping on and the people that are here, so no worries about that. I will verify your attendance through your online worksheet. All right, so today, like I said, our topic is preventing classroom burnout. And you know, such a serious topic right there. We're going to talk about what is burnout, what it means to be burned out. We're going to talk about how to recognize if either yourself or someone that you're working with is experiencing burnout. Most importantly, I want to talk today about the difference between stress and burnout, and making people understand that there is a difference between the two. You may be stressed out, but not necessarily burned out. And then we're going to go in and we're going to talk about the causes of burnout and ways to prevent it. All right, so that's kind of what is on our agenda right there. Now, the first thing that I want to really stress to you, and y'all have heard me say this in so many different trainings, is that people don't get burned out because of the job that they do. People get burned out because they forget why they do it, all right? So, you know, if you are experiencing burnout or you feel like you're experiencing burnout, or you have an employee that you feel like is experiencing some burnout, you know, we need to be reminded of why we are here, why we work in early education, why we work in after-school programs. Reconnect with that passion. That's going to help you more than anything right there. I was just talking to someone yesterday that is really struggling right now, managing her programs and keeping things afloat, and just is near the breakdown point, you know, the mental breakdown point. You know, and the advice that I gave to her is, you know, what we focus on, we get more of. So if you focus on the conflict, if you focus on the obstacles, if you focus on the pandemic, you focus on, you know, the staffing issues and everything, the issues with parents not following your health practices, if that's what your continued focus is on, that's what you're going to continue to get. So my advice to her is focus on your successes. Celebrate every win. Put your focus on the children in the classroom and the difference that we're making for them, the stability that we're creating for them. That's where our focus needs to be. What we focus on, we get more of. And when that's where you put your focus, you're going to eliminate that possibility of burnout. All right? So again, what you people don't get burned out because of the job that they do. They get burned out when they forget why they do it. All right? So very important. So as we go through the material today, I really want you to reflect on yourself and what are you going to do to remind yourself why you do what you do. Why did you choose, this career? This is not a job, this is a purpose. And that's the first thing right there, is recognizing that working in early education, this is not a job. This is a purpose. And you got to connect with that purpose and stay connected to that purpose. When you do that, you don't get burned out. All right? So, again, I want y'all to constantly reflect as we go through this material how you're going to remind yourself of why you do what you do. All right? So, let's talk about burnout and what is burnout. All right? If constant stress has you feeling physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted, you may be suffering from burnout. All right? So, are you physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted? All right? That could be a sign of burnout. But it's very interesting that we're having this topic today because this conversation has come up twice this week in my world, where, we're talking about the pandemic and we're talking about the fear and the anxiety of getting sick or losing a loved one or having to shut down our programs or shut down your classroom. There's a lot of fear and anxiety out there, and it just continues to beat us down and to beat us down. And you get something like a simple sinus infection, that normally you pop some Advil cold and sinus, you spray some Afrin up your nose, and you go on about your business, all right? No big deal. But I think that this fear and anxiety of the pandemic is just mentally beating us down. And how many of you are just exhausted? Like, seriously, just mentally and physically and emotionally exhausted because of this anxiety that we've had for going on a year now, all right? Now, this is where, we practice the power of acceptance. We practice patience. It is what it is, and there's nothing any of us can do about it, all right? And we motivate ourselves by saying those things. But let's be honest, we're also human. And yes, it is physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausting, all right? So, we have to keep ourselves motivated and we have to keep ourselves focused, all right? Because it's very, very easy to get distracted and, get pulled in that other direction. Now, what we know right here is that when you are feeling burned out, problems seem huge, all right? Little bitty problems seem ginormous, all right, when you're experiencing that burnout. And I want y'all to kind of think about times that you have experienced just a tiny little problem that has an easy solution, but because you were physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted, you turned that tiny little problem into a ginormous conflict, And then now looking back on it, you're probably going, why did I make such a big deal out of this? It was really nothing, all right? And I bet all of you watching today can relate to that. And I bet all of you have experienced that from time to time, where you just made a big old mountain out of a molehill. What we want to focus on here, sorry for the phone, you can tell I'm in a school today, but what we want to focus on here is being aware of that, all right? Being aware that I am, physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted, so when I do have that issue that comes up, I'm not going to make a big deal out of this, all right? Let's hit the pause button. Let's breathe. This is not that big of a deal. I can handle this, all right? But being able to recognize that because I'm exhausted, I'm gonna make a big deal out of it, all right? So being aware and being conscious, all right? That's step number one right there. And sometimes when you're feeling burned out and you have these issues come up, it may be perceived that you don't care. And you do care, all right, but the perception is that you don't care. And especially those of you that are directors and administrators that are watching this video today, I'm sure a lot of you have experienced that, where you have a teacher in your program and you're like, she just doesn't care. You know, I don't know what's going on with her. She used to be such a passionate and wonderful early educator, and now it just seems like she doesn't care. Well, she does care, but because she is, you know, physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted, that perception of her not caring is coming across right there. All right. Yes. All right. So, you know, to avoid that burnout right there, start off your day by taking care of yourself, both emotionally and physically, all right? So this is going to be one of your worksheet questions, by the way. I try to give y'all a heads up when a worksheet question comes up. But when you feel like you're starting to feel burned out, the first thing you've got to do is take care of yourself, all right? Take care of yourself. You know, stay connected with the people that understand you. And we've talked a lot about healthy attachment figures over the last year and how important it is to have a healthy attachment figure. You know, that person or that group of people that love you unconditionally, that understand you, that are there to support you. Make sure that you're staying connected with those people and that you're having verbal conversations with them. I know that text messages are handy and fun, but you know, sometimes when we need that emotional support, I need to hear your voice. I don't want to read your support. I want to hear your support. And if we can be in person, that's even better, but I know that that's limited right now for sure. All right. But again, emotionally, physically, mentally exhausted, you got to take care of yourself first. All right. So do your exercising, do your breathing. All right. Eat your healthy food, drink your water. I know that this is all cliche. All right. We hear it all the time about the importance of taking care of you, but you got to do it. You got to do it. All right. Because when we start feeling burned out, you know who we normally neglect? Yourself. All right. That's who we tend to neglect right there. So self-care has got to be a priority. All right. Self-care has got to be a priority. You can do that. You can do that. I just posted on Facebook yesterday about my Peloton. And I had a Peloton shirt on Tuesday's webinar, and I had a couple of people that messaged me about it. You know, so I do take time, you know, almost every day, sometimes twice a day, to hop on that cycle, and it makes my world go away for a little while. And that self-care has been amazing, and I don't know how I could have made it through this past year without that Peloton. It's my best friend now. All right. So let's talk about how to recognize burnout. All right. So what are some of the characteristics of burnout? And this is one of your worksheet questions. So the worksheet is going to ask you to name at least 5 characteristics of burnout. I'm going to give you more than 5 right here. But again, I want you to reflect and see if you identify with any of these characteristics, or directors and administrators, if you have some teachers that you need to support, and if you're recognizing some of these characteristics with your teachers right there. Oh, I see Annette is saying that she just started with her Peloton, and oh yeah, it is so motivating, and it really puts you in a great mood, and they do a wonderful job. it's great. It's great. All right. So, anyways, squirrel. I get distracted easily. All right. So let's talk about these characteristics of burnout. Powerlessness. All right. When you feel like you have no power. All right. And we feel that way right now. I mean, this whole year, we have felt like our power has been sucked out of us, and we have absolutely no control over the world that we're living in, and we don't. All right, let's just be honest, we don't. All right, but that powerlessness, is a big sign of, of that burnout. Now, one of my most favorite trainings that I do, and I really have to do it live. I can't do this one virtually. There are certain topics that you just can't do virtually. But one of my favorite trainings is the Energy Bus. That is a training based on John Gordon's book, The Energy Bus. And it talks about taking control of your bus, and you get to drive your bus wherever you want it to go. And you can't let someone else drive your bus for you. You can't let society, you can't let the world drive your bus for you. You have to take the steering wheel and you take your bus wherever you want it to go. And it's a great training. I love it. And if y'all have never read that book, you need to read it. All right, go out there and go buy it right now. The Energy Bus by John Gordon. It's going to change your life. I promise. But with this pandemic and with all of the government regulations and the restrictions and the mandates, it's kind of hard to take our bus where we want to go. Right now, I want to go to Mexico. I want a beach so bad. I can't stand it. For the first time in over 20 years, I have now gone over a year without a cruise because every cruise we've had scheduled has been canceled for the past year. So that's kind of out of my control. But I get to choose my intent, and I get to choose my how I'm going to perceive this situation and what I'm going to do with it. All right. So there we go. You can take it. That hopelessness, that emotional exhaustion that we've talked about. All right. Those are two other characteristics right there. Hopelessness, emotional exhaustion, detachment. Do any of y'all kind of feel like you're just all by yourself? I definitely, working with classroom teachers and then, reminding myself of what it was like being in the classroom every day. I remember those days where I just felt all by myself, I'm trying to work with this group of children, and I feel all alone. All right, that's a big sign of burnout right there. Isolation, irritability, all right, where you're just very easily irritated. The frustration, and we get frustrated over such small little items, all right? That frustration, that feeling of being trapped, okay? And no one is trapped. No one is forcing you to do what you do, all right? You do what you do because it's a choice, and you chose to work in this profession. You chose this journey, all right? So no one is ever trapped in what they do. Sometimes it feels that way though, right? There you go. Talking about one of my very good friends that also owns some preschool programs in another state. She's got two children that are about the same age as my two children. And we always kind of have this conversation and joke, I guess, that her daughter tells her all the time that she was born into the life of early education, because she was raised in these programs and her mother is an owner, and so her destiny is, being part of these programs. And, and I think my two kids kind of feel the same way sometimes, but my daughter chose to go in a different direction, and she chose to get a degree in graphic design and marketing, and she works completely out of the industry right there, and she will tell you, I'm never working in my dad's programs, but that's her choice, so don't feel like you're trapped because you've got a choice. All right. Another big characteristic of burnout, and this is probably the one that I see the most when working with people, is that feeling of failure, that I have failed in my duties and my responsibilities, that I'm not a good director or I'm not a good teacher and I'm failing these kids or I'm failing these families or as an administrator I'm failing my employees. And when we get beat down, when we get emotionally and physically exhausted, we start feeling like a failure. I'm letting people down. And I almost guarantee you that everybody that is on this webinar today has probably felt this at some point in time. And over the past year, I bet you have felt it a lot, that I'm just a complete and total failure. Well, you're not, okay? You're not. And I also want you to remember that failure is the greatest teacher, all right? And if you're going to fail forward. Learn from your mistakes, all right? And we have learned so much this past year, haven't we? We've definitely learned that we can operate on 60% capacity and we can keep our businesses going and keep our employees motivated with 60% capacity, So I think that when we do get back to whatever normal is going to look like and our enrollment starts going back up, it's going to be different because we realize now what we're capable of and what we can handle and what we can do, all right? So don't feel like a failure, all right? This is not an opportunity to fail. This is an opportunity to lead. And those of you that are in the classroom, this is an opportunity for you to teach, all right? And remember, what you offer to others, you strengthen within yourself. Keep that in mind, all right? So whatever it is that you feel like you're missing, that's what you give away. So if you feel like you're missing something, you're going to pour it in to those kids, all right? That love and that support and that stability, all right? And that encouragement and that sense of success, that's what you're going to pour into the children. And then that's going to help you in return. All right, so there you go. Let's talk about now the difference between stress and burnout. And this is probably, like I said at the beginning, probably the biggest takeaway that I want you to take from today's webinar is that a lot of times we're not burned out, we're just stressed. So it's very, very important for you to understand the difference between stress and burnout. And this is one of your worksheet questions right here, is to describe in your own words the difference between stress and burnout, all right? So when we are stressed, stress is characterized by over-engagement, all right? So we get overwhelmed, and that creates stress. Burnout is characterized by disengagement. So when we start feeling burned out, we start separating, all right? So stress is over-engagement, burnout is disengagement. With stress, our emotions are overreacted, where with burnout, our emotions are blunted, all right? So when we get stressed out, we make a big deal about things, all right? When we start feeling burned out, that's that perception that I don't care that I talked about earlier right there. When we are stressed, we produce urgency and hyperactivity, all right? There's that urgency. I got to get things done right now. If I don't get it done right now, then I'm going to be a failure. And that hyperactivity, you feel like you're doing 1,000 things at one time and you just can't juggle everything at one time. With burnout, that produces helplessness and hopelessness, okay? That feeling of being all alone, that I'm going to be a failure and I'm not going to be successful and I'm doing it all by myself, all right? So there's no urgency, there's no hyperactivity, it's just the opposite. Everything goes to the bottom of the priority list, and I'm just going to lay around and do nothing. All right. With stress, we have a loss of energy because we're putting all of our energy into this urgency and this hyperactivity, and it gets sucked out of us. So we have a loss of energy with stress. With burnout, we have a loss of motivation, we have a loss of ideas, we have a loss of hope. All right? So not a lot of creative thinking right there whenever you're feeling that burnout. So I'm going to jump a little bit ahead of myself because this is a good time to insert this right here. When you're trying to prevent burnout, either with yourself or your team, you got to tap into your creativity. Tap into that creative side of the brain. All right, the side of the brain that produces that creativity. All right, the right side of the brain. Tap into that. All right. So whatever it is that is your creative outlet, whether it's painting or dancing or singing or crafting, whatever your creative outlet is, tap into that when you're feeling burned out. Okay, it's amazing how much that's going to help you right there. That's going to help you with that loss of motivation, that loss of ideas, that loss of hope. All right. So, I know that it's very, very difficult to do team building exercises right now because we need to avoid gatherings and we need to practice our physical distancing. I get it. All right. But, in a normal conversation, what I would talk about here is to have a gathering with your team where you go to one of those painting classes and y'all all do a painting together and drink wine, or a cooking class that you can do as a group, or glass blowing. I know someone that just did a glass blowing outing with a group, and then they said it was fantastic. I think I'm going to check that out. I've never done that before. But all of these things are tapping into that creative side of the brain. And that's going to help you prevent that burnout. All right. So there you go. I know this sounds kind of corny and crazy, but I like Legos. I'm a grown man, a 50-year-old person putting together Lego sets. And I know that kind of sounds weird, but that's my creative outlet, and especially over the last year is putting together these massive Lego sets, and it's been very, very therapeutic for me, all right, to be able to do that. So it's been kind of cool right there. And I like to sing and dance by myself in the car because that's the only time I sound good is when I'm by myself in the car. But I sound fantastic when I'm by myself in the car. That's the only time. All right, but there you go. Stress will lead to anxiety disorders where burnout could lead to detachment and depression. All right. So, and I think a lot of you can relate to that. We've kind of already talked about that at the beginning of this webinar, the anxiety that we've had over the last year with the pandemic and all of the mandates and regulations and recommendations. There's a lot of anxiety out there, the fear of getting sick, all right? So, you could actually create an anxiety disorder with all of this stress that we're having these days. We're going to be dealing with this for years, by the way. This is not going to go away anytime soon. With burnout, if not addressed, can lead to depression. All right. So there you go. All right. So on the long-term impact that we're looking at right here, long-term impact of stress is the primary damage is physical harm to your body. And there's a lot of research out there right now about how stress can damage you physically. It can actually make your organs shut down, all right? And there's some scientific research behind all of this. So when you take care of yourself and you reduce that stress, All right, it's good for the inside of your body. Stress is bad for the inside of your body. With burnout, the primary damage is emotional. Okay, so we definitely want to keep emotionally healthy as well. I'm actually reading a book right now called Keep Sharp, and I can't remember the author's name off the top of my head, but it's all about keeping your brain sharp and functioning at its highest level the older you get, and it's really, really fascinating. A lot of the stuff is very medical, but they talk a lot about taking care of your emotional health and how important that is. But it starts with taking care of you, and that's why I led off with that in this topic, is that when you're preventing burnout or you're dealing with burnout, the first thing you've got to do is take care of you. All right, that's important. All right, with stress, stress may kill you prematurely. All right, so again, there's scientific research that people that do not manage their stress can die at an early age. With burnout is going to make your life not worth living. All right, because again, that feeling of hopelessness that you've got right there. So, again, those of you that are participating in this webinar right now and you're reflecting on your current situation, or again, directors and administrators that are on here, when you're focusing on your team, all right, I want you to be able to identify, are you stressed or are you burned out? Okay, and be able to recognize the difference right there. All right. What I think you're going to find is that in a lot of situations, you're not burned out. You're just stressed. All right, and we need to get that stress under control. Okay, but that's the big difference right there. All right, so let's talk about signs of burnout in the classroom. So how do you know you're experiencing burnout? Or directors and administrators, how do you know if you have a teacher that is experiencing burnout in the classroom? Well, the first indicator right here, and again, this is a worksheet question, so you might want to take notes here. The first indicator, every day in the classroom is a bad day. Okay, and how many of you, directors and administrators, you have some teachers that at the end of the day, today was such a horrible day. You would not believe what Katrina did. Every day is a bad day. Well, if you start noticing that every single day is a bad day, that's a sign of burnout. We need to get that person reconnected with their passion. We need to remind this person why they do what they do. Or if you sit there and every day when you go home, you're like, I had such a horrible day. All right, it was such a bad day. That's a big indicator of burnout. Now, with that, I would like to remind you, we don't have bad days, we have bad moments. Okay? We don't have bad days, we have bad moments. The entire day wasn't bad. You had some good moments today. First off, you woke up this morning. That's worth celebrating right there. Okay, you woke up this morning. Because what's the opposite? You didn't wake up. You're dead. All right? So that's celebration number one. You don't get to come to a job. You get to go to a purpose. All right? Every day when you go into that classroom, you're making a difference. All right? Whether it's positive or negative, you're making a difference. All right? So you've got some good moments in there. And if you're, whether it's yourself or you're working with someone and you feel like every day is a bad day, get yourself a sheet of paper and put a big T on it. All right? Make a big T. I just had a pen right here. Put a big T right here. And I want y'all to start listing out the good moments. Here are the good things that happened today. Here are the bad things that happened today. And I think you're going to realize that you had more positive moments than you did negative. But we tend to focus on those negative moments, and then we say we had a bad day. You don't have bad days, you have bad moments. Okay? Recognize that. All right? Caring about the children seems like a total waste of energy. All right? And I've definitely seen this working with some early educators, especially, you know, when you do have a rough group of kids, or you work in a challenging center with challenging families, you know, that you're like, well, nothing I do is going to help this kid. Well, when you start thinking that way, we've got to work on your positive intent. Remember, children cannot act different until they are seen different. All right? Even adults, the adults that you're working with, they cannot act different until they are seen different. So if you feel like caring about the children seem like a total waste of energy, then we've got to really practice some positive intent. Seeing the world through loving eyes. Seeing that child through loving eyes. All right? And, you know, that this is not an obstacle. This is an opportunity for me to teach. Directors and administrators, this is not an obstacle. This is an opportunity for me to lead. All right? So take those negative moments and turn them into opportunities. Then caring about the children will not seem like a total waste of energy. If the majority of the day is spent on activities that you find either mind-numbing, dull, or unpleasant, so everything you do in the classroom you hate, all right? You know, oh, I hate doing science, all right? It's so unpleasant. Oh, I got to practice reading with these kids. This is mind-numbing, okay? Oh, we got to go outside, dull, all right? If everything you're doing throughout the day is either mind-numbingly dull or unpleasant, that's an indicator of burnout. Okay, so we really need to focus on, you know, everything that we do in the classroom has a purpose and has a meaning and is beneficial to both the child and to you. Directors and administrators, everything you do throughout the day, you know, has value. All right, so again, we got to go back to positive intent right here. And y'all, practicing positive intent is a lot of work. All right, you have to be very, very focused and determined to be able to do this. Remember, you know, 77% of our brain is negative. Only 23% of our brain is positive. So you have to work hard at being positively contagious, but you can do it, all right, if you stay focused right there. If you feel like nothing that I do makes a difference, all right, nothing that I do in this classroom makes a difference in that child's life. If you're feeling that way, that's an indicator of burnout. You've got to remind yourself that everything you do makes a difference right there. And if every single child in your classroom is an issue, every single child in your classroom needs to be diagnosed with something and sent to services, all right, that's an issue, all right? So you can't have an entire classroom full of children and every single one of them have an issue. If that's the case, the issue is with you, all right, not with that group of kids. But, you know, I remember I had this teacher one time, she didn't work for us very long, that, you know, she had been there like maybe a week, had gone through training and orientation, and it had been in the classroom for maybe a week. And she brought me a list that had pretty much every single child's name on it and said, all of these kids got to go. And I'm like, no, this list of kids are not the ones that got to go. You're the one that's got to go, all right? These are opportunities, all right? You can't have a whole classroom full of kids with issues. All right, what are some causes of classroom burnout? Let's talk about this really quick. But setting unrealistic goals for yourself and the children. Pace yourself, all right? It's a sprint. It's a sprint. It's not a race. And we move through our our classrooms, we move through our academic year at a pace. And sometimes we go faster, sometimes we go slower based on what's going on at the moment. But setting those unrealistic goals for either yourself or the children is going to create burnout. And recognizing that every single child is unique. Every child is different. Administrators and directors, every employee is unique and different. Every parent is unique and different. You can't use a cookie cutter approach to this. If you're trying to put everyone in a cookie cutter, you're going to get burned out. All right? But recognizing the uniqueness and the potential in all children, their families, and your employees, that's going to keep you going. Recognize the uniqueness and the potential in everyone that you work with. All right? Working with rules and regulations that you don't understand will definitely burn you out. This has been tough for us this year, right? Because especially, y'all remember back at the beginning of the pandemic, it seemed like we had a different set of rules or recommendations every other day. And it took a while before we got to a point where we had some consistent direction. And that was hard, definitely hard. Y'all remember that? Now we're like, we got this, right? And we remember we talked at the beginning of the webinar about, when you're emotionally and physically exhausted, how you make such a big deal out of little bitty things. Look back at, March and April of 2020 when we started getting all of these rules and regulations, and what a ginormous mountain we made out of it. And now, 9-10 months later, we're like, we got this. So that's a great example of it right there. But this is why I really, those of you that participate in a lot of my trainings or you come to my 4-day director credential course, I really try hard to explain the reasons why we have certain rules and certain regulations. Because when you understand the reason why we have a rule or regulation, you're more willing to meet the expectation. And same thing, with our customers and our employees. When they understand the reason why we have a policy or a process, they're more willing to comply. But when you are forced to work under a rule or a regulation that you don't understand, it creates burnout. All right? It creates burnout. So, my advice to you, ask questions. All right? If you feel like you've got a rule or regulation that you're having to live by, ask why. Let that inner 4-year-old come out in you. Why? 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 All right? So that way you can understand. And when you understand, you won't have that burnout. All right? Doing work that frequently causes you to violate your personal beliefs. All right? So, understand what is important to you. What are your beliefs and convictions? This is an easy one to me. If you're working in a program that has different beliefs or convictions than you, why are you there? All right? That's not a good place for you to be at. It's not a good place for the program to have you. All right? So, again, I talk about this so much when we talk about interviewing and hiring, that you want to make sure that your school is full of people that believe in the same thing as you. That you've got a team that has the same philosophy, the same beliefs, the same convictions. That's going to prevent that burnout right there. But if you're being forced to do something that you don't believe in, that's going to create burnout. The easy solution here, go somewhere else. All right? Now, hopefully, you believe in your program and you believe in your mission, your philosophy, your values. All right? And I think that when we talk about preventing classroom burnout, that reminder of your beliefs, your value, and your mission is so very important. All right, have that displayed in your classroom, have that displayed in your office. All right, if you feel bored with the kids, maybe it's time to move to another classroom. Maybe it's time for a new age group, a new challenge. All right, we've done this past year. With a couple of long-term teachers that are very awesome, dedicated early educators, but they just needed a new challenge this year. So we mixed things up and moved them into some different classrooms, and it's working well. All right. So might want to look at that right there too. All right. Some ways that we can prevent classroom burnout. Like I said at the very beginning of today's webinar, remind yourself why you work with young children, all right? Why do you do what you do? Y'all need to be reminding yourself of this daily. Start yourself a journal, all right? Start yourself a journal, get yourself a spiral notebook, and when you have successes in the classroom, when you have a win, journal about it. Write about it. Write down what was the accomplishment, what was the milestone, what was the success. When you receive a compliment, either from another employee, a coworker, or a compliment from a parent, or a compliment from a licensing rep, journal about it. Okay, write it down. And then when you are starting to feel burned out, and that feeling of helplessness and hopelessness, starts to overcome you, pull out your journal and start reading it, okay? This is a wonderful tool to help prevent that classroom burnout, all right, or administrator burnout, all right? But remind yourself of past successes. Plus, I think journaling is just healthy to begin with, all right? Writing things down, getting the garbage out of your head and onto a piece of paper is healthy, all right? So, I like doing that to begin with. Clarify your job description. What are your responsibilities? Are you doing things that are really not in your job description? Are you taking on too much? Or are you not challenging yourself enough? All right, so clarify that job description right there. Move to another classroom, like I've already mentioned. Sometimes we just need a new challenge to ignite us and to get us energized. Ask for new ideas and lessons. We live in this beautiful world right now where we've got Pinterest and teachers pay teachers and all of these different avenues where we can get fresh ideas and sometimes when you do things different, when you change things up a little bit, it lights that fire and helps prevent that classroom burnout. No need to reinvent the wheel over and over and over again, okay? There's so many avenues out there for you. I think this next tip to prevent classroom burnout is an important one. Take time off. Scheduled time off, all right? And I know that's hard right now because we can't really go anywhere, and have the good time that we normally do, but even if it's a staycation or, just go book a hotel room and spend the night in a hotel room, but have some you time, have some family time, but take some time off. And I know working with administrators, I have this conversation a lot that you need to take your time off. I don't want you to get burned out. You need to take your time off. You need your you time. Scheduled time off. I'm going to stress that. Get more education, enhance your professional development. All right. This is one of the most motivating things we can do in our industry is professional development. When you go to a training, when you watch a webinar, when you enhance your formal education, that's motivating, and it's going to help you with the burnout. So, enroll in that CDA class, take that director credential course, do an online college class or something. But you'll find that that's very, very rewarding, both personally and professionally right there. Another big tip that I encourage people quite often is to join a support group. Find a group of directors that get together, every other week or once a month, or find a group of pre-K teachers. There are so many Facebook pages out there these days that are director groups and pre-K teacher groups and infant teacher groups. That's encouraging right there. Make sure that whatever group it is, that it's positive and encouraging and not one where people just throw their garbage out there. I know a couple of Facebook groups that I completely ignore because it's mind draining. There's so much negativity, and I'm like, we're supposed to be supporting each other and picking each other up, and so and that's why I have like a zero tolerance for negative comments on my Tim the Trainer Facebook page. You put something negative on my Facebook page, I'm going to delete it, all right? Because we need positive, uplifting, encouraging stuff. But find that support group. That's very, very helpful right there, all right? Know your limits and accept your feelings. It's okay for you to have feelings. Don't beat yourself up because you're feeling sad or because you're feeling anxious or because you're feeling frustrated. It's okay to have feelings. That's part of the 5 steps of self-regulation. All right, the first step of self-regulation is to know your feelings. All right, to know that you are triggered and to be able to name your feelings. All right, I did those totally out of order, but know that you are triggered, calm, and then be able to name your feeling. All right, it's okay. Accept that. All right, leave your teacher hat in the classroom. So when you leave the classroom, you leave the classroom. Don't live and breathe it all day, all night, all weekend long. All right, when you leave that classroom, you're now mommy, you're now friend, you're now spouse. All right, so leave the teacher hat at home. Directors and administrators, I'm talking to you too. Okay, what happens in the school stays in the school. When you leave the school, you leave the school. Okay, you got to have your you time. Otherwise, you're going to burn out. All right, leave it at the door. Leave it at the door. Exercise with the kids. I've told y'all so many times that I'm so excited about the new regulations coming out on physical activity because it's going to be so awesome, not only for the kids, but for the adults in the classroom too. It's going to be awesome, all right? So, exercise with your kids. That actually is a good way to reduce burnout in your program. Nurture your closest relationships. So like I said, find that attachment figure. Value that attachment figure. Have those verbal conversations with your spouse, with your own personal children, with your tribe. Find your tribe and stay connected to them. All right? Keep a healthy social life that is separate from your job. All right? Have a healthy social life that is separate from your professional life. And if you do hang out with people that you teach with, you got to make some ground rules that when we're hanging out socially, we don't talk about the kids, we don't talk about the classroom. You got to be able to draw that line and separate it, all right? This is going to help you avoid burnout. If all you ever do is talk about the school and talk about the kids and talk about the classroom, you're going to burn out. Draw the line, okay? Draw the line. All right? Connect with the community, all right? Acts of service, doing something for others. Okay, that's going to be a big help to prevent classroom burnout when you're helping other people. That's a big caring trademark right now. So what is your caring trademark? What is it that you're doing for the community out there? And then I've mentioned this in so many webinars here lately. In the absence of communication, negativity will fill the void. So communicate, communicate, communicate. When you don't communicate, you're going to burn out. All right. So that was a lot of information in a very short amount of time. That hour went very, very fast. So I hope that this was helpful to you. I hope that this is helpful to your team. All right. Take care of yourself. Remind yourself why you do what you do. All right. Those are my 2 biggest pieces of advice right there to prevent burnout. Your online worksheet should be on Facebook right now. So those of you that are live on Facebook, you can refresh your browser and you should see the links to complete your online worksheet. That's there. I will also post it in this chat stream right here. All right, awesome. Thank you all so much for being with me today. I really do appreciate all of you. Do y'all want to know what keeps me from burning out? It's all of y'all. All right, you are my motivator, and seeing you successful motivates me. So, you know, just looking at the number of people that are participating in today's webinar is great motivation for me, and thank you all so much for what you do. All right, hang in there. You got this. All right, we're gonna get through this together. So there you go. All right, have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone. Take care, and I will see you all next week. Bye.